Christmas morning was supposed to be perfect. I had spent months planning a surprise so big it could change my parents' lives forever. I walked into their house with my heart pounding, holding the keys to something they had always dreamed of. But what happened next? It shattered me in ways I can't explain. One moment they were smiling, the next moment their words cut deeper than anything I had ever heard. That single day changed everything between us, and none of us knew how far things would go after that. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Madison, and this is the day everything between me and my parents fell apart. I had worked 2 jobs for nearly a year. Every paycheck, every tip I earned, I saved it all. I didn't buy new clothes, didn't go out with friends, skipped movies, even stopped ordering coffee. Why? Because I had one goal: to give my parents something they deserved but never had the courage to buy, a brand new car. Not a used one, not a cheap one, a real, shiny red car with heated seats, perfect for cold winters. Insurance covered for a whole year. It was standing outside their house with a giant bow on top, like the ones you see in holiday commercials. I had imagined their reaction 100 times. Mom crying tears of joy, Dad smiling proudly, maybe even hugging me, which he rarely did. When I rang the bell, my mom opened the door, surprised to see me so early. "Madison, what are you doing here this early?" she asked. "I have a surprise," I said, my heart racing. Dad walked over, holding his coffee mug, looking curious. I led them outside. The car stood there, shining under the winter sun. Their eyes widened. For a moment, they just stared at it. "Merry Christmas," I said softly, handing them the keys. And then Dad spoke, his words I will never forget. "Oh, we thought it would be something bigger." It felt like someone had hit me, something bigger. I had spent everything I had. Months of sacrifice, long hours of work, and this was their reaction. I looked at Mom. She didn't say much either, just a small, awkward smile. I slipped the keys back into my pocket and nodded slowly. "Okay," I said quietly. No shouting, no anger. I just turned, got into the car, and drove away. As I drove, my heart felt heavy. I couldn't stop thinking about their words. Something bigger. What could be bigger than this for them? My thoughts were loud inside my head, louder than the Christmas music playing on the radio. And hey, before I go on, if you're still watching, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. I reached home, parked the car in my driveway, and just sat there for a long time. I didn't even take the keys out. The excitement I had felt in the morning was gone, replaced by something else: disappointment. I thought about calling them, asking why they said what they said, but I didn't. Instead, I stayed silent. Maybe they would call, maybe they would explain. But they didn't. And that silence, it was just the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in my bed staring at the ceiling while the cold wind outside made the windows rattle. My phone stayed silent on the nightstand. No call, no message. I kept thinking maybe Dad would call and say he didn't mean it that way. Maybe Mom would text and tell me they loved the car, loved the thought, loved me. But there was nothing. The house felt empty even though I was inside it. It wasn't just the silence, it was the weight of everything unsaid. I had expected so much joy, so much happiness when I drove that car to them. I had pictured us taking a ride together, Mom laughing in the passenger seat, Dad teasing about my parking skills. Instead, I was alone with the car parked outside, looking as unwanted as I felt. The next morning, I tried to distract myself. I made coffee, turned on the TV, even cleaned my room. But my mind kept replaying Dad's words. "We thought it would be something bigger." I wanted to ask him, bigger like what? A house, a bag full of cash, a miracle. I didn't tell anyone about what happened. Not my friends, not even Sarah, my best friend who usually knows everything about me. It was too embarrassing to say out loud. I mean, what kind of parents react like that to a gift? A car isn't a small thing. It's not like buying flowers or a cake. It was months of sacrifice. By the 3rd day, I gave up waiting for them to call. I picked up my phone and texted Mom, "Hey, just checking in. How's the car?" Hours passed, no reply. I called Dad. It rang, no answer. My chest felt tight. Maybe they were busy, I told myself. Maybe they were just surprised and needed time, but deep down it hurt. On the 5th day, I found out from my aunt that their old car had finally broken down on the highway. It wasn't safe to drive anymore. My first thought was they would call me now. They had to, right? I had the new car sitting here with their names on the insurance papers. But no call came. That night, I sat in the driveway inside the new car, holding the keys in my hand. The car smelled like fresh leather, the dashboard lights glowing softly in the dark. It felt like the car was waiting too, like it was part of this silent war none of us wanted to admit was happening. I thought about driving back to their house, leaving the car there whether they wanted it or not. But my pride stopped me. They hadn't even thanked me properly. They hadn't asked about it. And now their old car was gone and still nothing. A week passed, then another. My phone stayed silent except for work calls and Sarah asking why I was so quiet lately. I didn't know how to explain it to her. Then one evening, just as I was making tea, my phone buzzed. It was Mom. "Madison," she said, her voice softer than I expected. "We need to talk." I froze. For a second, I didn't know what to say. "About the car?" I asked. "About everything," she replied. Her voice sounded tired, maybe even sad. "Can you come over tomorrow?" My heart pounded. This was it. Maybe they finally understood. Maybe they realized how much I had done for them. I agreed to come, but the whole night my mind kept spinning. What did she mean by everything? The next day, I drove to their house, the same house where this whole mess had started. I parked outside but didn't take the car keys this time. I didn't want to feel that sting again if things went wrong. Mom opened the door, her face pale. Dad was sitting in the living room, looking at the floor like he didn't know what to say. "We had a fight," Mom said finally. "About the car, about everything else too." I stayed quiet, waiting. Dad looked up. His eyes were tired. "We didn't mean to hurt you, Madison," he said slowly. "It's just, we thought you'd spend that money on yourself. You're young. You should be living your life, not worrying about us." I didn't know what to say. Part of me understood, but another part of me wanted to scream. Then why say it like that? Why make it sound like my gift wasn't enough? Mom sighed. "We should have just said thank you," she admitted. But we were shocked. And then when the old car broke down, it just made things worse. We didn't know how to fix it after that. I looked at them. "You could have called," I said quietly. Dad nodded slowly. "You're right." The room fell silent again, but this time it felt different. Not angry, not cold. Just heavy, like everyone was carrying things they didn't know how to put into words. I thought about all the nights I stayed awake working overtime. All the times I imagined this moment being happy, not like this. Finally, Dad spoke again. "Do you still have the car?" I nodded. "Can we see it?" he asked. For a moment, I didn't move. Then I pulled the keys from my pocket and handed them to him. We walked outside together. The car was still there, shiny and perfect, like it had been waiting for this day. Dad ran his hand over the hood slowly. Mom sat inside, her fingers tracing the steering wheel. "It's beautiful," Mom whispered. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. For the first time since Christmas morning, I felt like maybe things could still be okay. Standing there beside the car, watching my parents touch it like it was something sacred, I felt emotions I couldn't name. Part of me was relieved they finally saw it. Part of me was still hurt that it had taken this long. I wanted to hear words like thank you or we're proud of you or even we're sorry. But none came. Mom just kept looking at the car's interior, her fingers moving over the dashboard like she was reading Braille. Dad stayed quiet, his hands in his pockets. Finally, he said, "We'll take good care of it." That was all. I nodded slowly, my chest tight. That was what I had been waiting for all along. Not joy, not gratitude, just a practical statement about care. I wanted to shake him and ask, "Don't you see what this means to me?" But I stayed silent. I had learned by now that silence was safer than speaking. They drove the car that day. Mom smiled faintly as she reversed out of the driveway. Dad kept saying things like smooth ride and good brakes. But no one talked about the weeks of awkward silence between us. No one talked about Christmas morning and the words that had started all this. As they drove away, I stood there on the sidewalk watching the red car disappear around the corner. A part of me hoped this was the start of things getting better. Another part of me wasn't sure. Days passed. The car became part of their lives quickly. I would see it parked outside their house when I drove by on my way to work. Mom called once to say it was great for grocery shopping. Dad texted me a photo of it parked beside his old truck, like he was slowly accepting it. But something between us was still broken. We spoke, yes. We exchanged polite words. But the warmth we used to have, Sunday dinners, random phone calls, laughing about small things, it wasn't there anymore. One evening, Sarah dropped by my apartment. She took one look at me and said, "Okay, spill it. What's going on?" I tried to brush it off, but Sarah wasn't someone you could hide things from. I told her everything. The car, Christmas morning, the silence, the awkward conversation later. She listened without interrupting, her eyebrows slowly rising. "Wait," she said when I was done. "You bought them a whole car and they complained it wasn't big enough. Are you kidding me?" I shrugged. They said they thought I should have used the money on myself. Sarah rolled her eyes so hard I thought they'd get stuck. "Madison, that's insane. Most parents would cry happy tears if their kid did something like that. Yours acted like you gave them socks." I laughed a little, but it wasn't a happy laugh. "I don't know, Sarah. Maybe they're right. Maybe I should have spent it on myself." She leaned forward. "Do you believe that?" I didn't answer because I didn't know. Weeks turned into months. The car was theirs now. They drove it everywhere. But between us, the distance stayed. We saw each other less. Conversations were shorter. Even birthdays felt quieter. Then one night the phone rang. It was Dad. His voice sounded different, shaken, like he was holding something back. "Madison," he said, "we need you to come. It's Mom." My heart stopped. "What happened?" "She's fine," he said quickly. "Just come." I grabbed my keys and left without another word. When I reached their house, Mom was sitting on the couch, pale but smiling weakly. Dad explained she had felt dizzy while driving earlier. Nothing serious, the doctor said, just stress and maybe skipping meals. Still, seeing her like that scared me. She was always so full of energy. Now she looked small somehow, like the weight of everything was pressing down on her. That night while she rested, Dad and I sat in the kitchen. For the first time in months, he spoke openly. "Madison," he said, staring at his coffee, "I think we messed up." I didn't say anything. "That day on Christmas, we should have been grateful. You did something huge for us. And instead of showing you love, we made you feel small. I've been thinking about it for months," he sighed. "Your mom, too, she just didn't know how to say it." I swallowed hard. It wasn't just the car, Dad. It was everything after, the silence, the distance. He nodded slowly. "I know, I don't want it to be like this anymore." Something in his voice sounded real this time. Not just words, but regret. The next morning, Mom hugged me before I left. Really hugged me like she used to when I was little. "Thank you for the car," she whispered, "and I'm sorry we didn't say that sooner." Driving home, I felt lighter than I had in months. Maybe this was the start of fixing things. Maybe we could go back to how we used to be. But I didn't know then that life had more turns waiting for us, some that would test everything again. After that night when Dad admitted they had messed up, I thought things were finally settling down. For the first time since Christmas, I felt like maybe we were becoming a family again. Mom seemed softer when she talked to me. Dad didn't keep conversations short anymore, and I even started visiting on weekends again. But life has a way of throwing surprises at you when you least expect them. It was a Thursday evening. I had just come back from work, tired but feeling good because tomorrow was my day off. I had made myself some pasta and was scrolling through my phone when it rang. It was Dad. Something about the timing made my stomach twist. Dad never called this late unless it was important. "Hey, Dad," I said, trying to sound calm. His voice on the other end wasn't calm at all. "Madison, it's Mom. We're at the hospital." The fork in my hand clattered onto the plate. What happened?" She collapsed, he said, voice shaking. They're running tests, just get here. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might break through my chest. I grabbed my keys and ran to the car. The drive to the hospital felt endless. Every red light felt like an enemy. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. When I finally reached, Dad was packing outside the emergency room. He looked older in that moment, like the stress had carved years into his face. They're saying it might be her heart, he said, eyes wide. They don't know yet. I sat beside him, my own legs trembling. I couldn't imagine losing her, not like this, not when things were finally getting better between us. Hours passed. Finally, a doctor came out and said she was stable but needed to stay for observation. It wasn't a heart attack, thank God, but she had been ignoring her health for too long. Stress, bad diet, exhaustion, it had all caught up to her. That night I sat beside her hospital bed. She looked so small lying there, wires attached, machines beeping softly. Her eyes opened slowly. "Madison," she whispered. "I'm here, Mom," I said, holding her hand. She squeezed it weakly. "You've always been here." Something in me cracked then. All the anger I had carried since Christmas, all the hurt, it didn't matter anymore. I just wanted her to be okay. When she fell asleep again, I stepped out to call Sarah. I told her everything in a shaky voice. "Madison," she said, "this is your chance to fix things. Life's too short for grudges." I knew she was right. The next morning, Dad and I sat in the hospital cafeteria. Neither of us touched our coffee. Finally, he said, "When she gets out, things have to change. We can't keep living like this, holding back words, acting like nothing's wrong." I nodded. "I know." He looked at me. "I was wrong, Madison, about the car, about how we treated you. Your mom knows it too. We just didn't say it soon enough." I stared at my coffee cup. "Why didn't you?" He sighed. "Pride, maybe. Stubbornness. We didn't want to admit our daughter did something huge for us while we gave so little back." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to stay angry. Another part just wanted my mom healthy again. Later that day, when Mom was awake, she told me something I didn't expect. "When I collapsed yesterday," she said softly, "the first thing I thought of was you. How I never said thank you the right way. How I let stupid pride get in the way." "Mom," I said, my throat tight, "you don't have to." "Yes, I do," she interrupted. Her voice was weak but firm. "You gave us that car because you love us, and we acted like it wasn't enough. That was wrong. I was wrong." For the first time since this whole thing began, I felt like maybe we were finally saying the things that had been locked inside us for too long. That evening, while she rested, I sat outside the hospital and just breathed. The cold air felt different somehow, lighter, like maybe things were finally turning around. And hey, if you're still watching, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know. And comment your city. I want to see how far this story travels. The doctors said Mom could go home in a few days if she rested properly. Dad promised he would take care of everything, her meals, her stress, even driving her around in the car I had given them. For the first time in months, I felt like maybe we were becoming a family again. But deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. Life has a way of testing you again just when you think the storm is over. And I had no idea the biggest test was still waiting for us. Mom came home from the hospital 3 days later. Dad and I helped her into the house slowly like she was made of glass. She looked tired but happy to be back. The car sat in the driveway, shiny and waiting, the same car that had started all this chaos on Christmas morning. For the next few days, things felt different in our house. Softer, quieter. Mom rested like the doctors told her to. Dad actually cooked meals instead of just eating takeout. I visited almost every evening after work. It felt like maybe we had been given a second chance. But sometimes, life has this strange way of giving you peace right before it takes it away again. One evening, about a week after Mom came home, I stopped by to drop off some groceries. Mom was sitting on the couch, sorting through old mail stacked on the coffee table. I hugged her, told her I'd put the groceries in the kitchen, and went to grab a glass of water. When I came back, she was holding an envelope. Madison, she said softly. This came while I was in the hospital. I looked at the envelope. My name was written on it in messy handwriting. It wasn't familiar. Who's it from? I asked. She handed it to me. No return address. I opened it carefully. Inside was a single piece of paper. The words were written in black ink, shaky like the writer's hand couldn't stay still. It said, "You don't know me, but I know you. I saw what happened on Christmas morning. I saw how they looked at you when you gave them that car. They didn't deserve it. There are things about your parents you don't know, Madison. Things you should know. If you want the truth, come to the old cafe on Main Street this Friday at 6 p.m. Come alone." My hands went cold. I read it twice, 3 times. My brain tried to make sense of it, but it felt like the words were in another language. Who was this person? What did they mean by the truth about your parents? I looked at Mom. Did you read this? She shook her head. Number should I have? I stuffed the letter back into the envelope. It's probably nothing. But it didn't feel like nothing. That night I barely slept. I kept thinking about the letter, the handwriting, the words, the way it said they didn't deserve it asterisk. Friday came faster than I expected. After work, I drove straight to the cafe. My heart was pounding the whole way there. The place was half empty when I walked in. Old wooden tables, yellow lights, the smell of coffee and rain. In the corner, a man sat alone. He looked up when I came in like he had been waiting. "You're Madison," he said. It wasn't a question. I nodded slowly. "Who are you?" He introduced himself as Frank, said he had lived in the same town as my parents for years, said he knew things about them I didn't. "What things?" I asked. He leaned in. "About the money, about why they reacted the way they did when you gave them that car." My chest tightened. "What are you talking about?" Frank told me that years ago, before I was even born, my parents had taken a loan from someone they shouldn't have. A man named Carter. He said Carter wasn't the kind of person you borrowed money from unless you were desperate. "They paid him back," Frank said, "but it ruined their reputation. People stopped trusting them. Your dad, he never got over it. He hated feeling small. That's why when you gave them that car, he felt exposed. Like you were rescuing them the way no one rescued him back then. His pride couldn't handle it." I sat there frozen. All this time I thought they were just ungrateful, but maybe it was deeper than that. Frank handed me a folder. "These are old papers, records. I thought you should know." I opened it. Inside were loan documents, letters, even a few newspaper clippings about Carter and the people who had crossed him. When I looked up, Frank was gone. Just gone. I drove home in silence, the folder on the seat beside me. My head felt heavy. My parents had never told me any of this, not once. That night, I sat in my room and read through every page. Piece by piece, the story came together. The debts, the fights, the way Carter had threatened people who didn't pay him back on time. Suddenly, Christmas morning made sense in a way it hadn't before. The look on Dad's face when I handed him those keys, it wasn't just surprise, it was shame. I didn't know whether to feel angry or sorry for them, maybe both. The next day, I confronted Dad, showed him the folder. He stared at it for a long time before saying, "Where did you get this?" "Someone gave it to me," I said. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" He sighed, sitting down heavily. "Because it was in the past, because I didn't want you to see us the way we were back then, weak, desperate." "Dad," I said quietly, "I don't care about the money. I just wish you trusted me enough to tell me the truth." He didn't look at me. "I didn't want you to carry our mistakes." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Mom came in, holding a cup of tea, looking between us. "What's going on?" I showed her the folder. Her hands trembled when she saw it. "Madison," she said softly, "we wanted to protect you from this, from all of it." I didn't know what to say. Because now I understood everything, but it didn't make it hurt any less. And hey, if you're still here, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story goes. That night, lying in bed, I realized something. The letter hadn't just given me information. It had opened a door to a past I didn't even know existed. And some doors, once opened, can't be closed again. After that night with the folder spread out on my bed, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept spinning, stuck on the man named Carter, on the debts, on the way my parents had looked when I showed them the papers. I had always thought I knew everything about my family, but now it felt like there was this whole hidden life they had lived before I was even born. The next morning, I decided I needed answers. Real answers. Not just papers. Not just rumors from some guy named Frank who appeared and disappeared like a ghost. I wanted to hear it from my parents, from their own mouths, no running away this time. So I went to their house after work. Mom was in the kitchen making soup. Dad was fixing a loose cabinet door like nothing had happened yesterday, like I hadn't found out half their lives had been kept from me. "Dad," I said, "we need to talk, both of you." They looked at each other. Mom set the spoon down. Dad wiped his hands on a towel. We all sat at the table. "Tell me everything," I said. And they did. It started before they were even married. Dad had lost his job back then, the economy was bad, and they were trying to keep the house from being taken by the bank. Someone introduced him to Carter, said he could help. He did, but with interest so high it was almost impossible to pay back. When they fell behind, Carter sent people to remind them. Sometimes those reminders were friendly. Sometimes they were. By the time they paid him off, Dad's pride was gone. Mom said he changed after that, became harder, quieter. He hated handouts, hated pity, hated feeling like anyone had power over him. "That's why he reacted the way he did on Christmas," Mom said softly, glancing at Dad. "It wasn't the car, it was what it represented, like he was small again, like someone had to save him." Dad didn't deny it. He just stared at the table, jaw tight. I sat there, trying to take it all in. The story made sense, but it didn't erase the hurt. It didn't change the fact that when I tried to give them something out of love, they had thrown it back in my face. I told them that. I told them how it felt standing there on Christmas morning, holding those keys, watching them look at each other like my gift wasn't good enough. Mom reached across the table, took my hand. "We were wrong," she said. "We should have seen it for what it was. We should have just said thank you." Dad finally looked at me then. "I'm sorry, Madison." It wasn't much, but it was something. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling there was more to all this. Carter might have been gone from our lives, but something about the way Frank had appeared, about the way he knew everything, didn't sit right with me. So I decided to find him. The next day, I went back to the cafe where we met. The waitress said she hadn't seen him since that night. I asked around town, but no one seemed to know him. It was like he'd vanished. Then, 3 days later, another letter showed up at my door. Same handwriting, same shaky lines. "There's one more thing you need to know. Meet me at the park near the river. Sunday, 7 p.m. Come alone." I almost didn't go. Part of me thought I was walking into something I didn't understand, but curiosity is a powerful thing. Sunday evening, I drove to the park. The sun was setting, sky painted orange and pink. I waited by the benches near the water. Frank showed up right on time. He looked more tired than before, like he hadn't slept in days. "You came," he said. "Just tell me what this is about," I said. He nodded slowly. "There's a reason I know so much about Carter, about your parents, about all of it." I crossed my arms. "Okay, tell me." He looked out at the river before speaking. "Because I used to work for him." The words hit me like a punch. Frank explained that years ago, he was one of the men Carter sent to collect debts. He said he hated the job but needed the money. That's how he knew my parents. He was one of the people who had shown up at their door. "I always remembered them," Frank said. "Your dad, he was proud, too proud, but he paid every cent. Most people didn't." I didn't know what to say. Frank pulled something from his jacket, another folder. "This is why I came to you. Carter kept records, names, addresses. The people who crossed him, some of them disappeared, Madison." My stomach turned. Disappeared. Frank nodded. "I think your parents were lucky, and I think Carter's story isn't over." I opened the folder. Inside were names, dates, notes scribbled in margins, and one page with today's date circled in red. My parents' names were on it. Fear crawled up my spine. "What does this mean?" I asked. Frank shook his head. "I don't know, but if someone else has Carter's old records, maybe they're coming to collect again." I felt cold all over. My parents didn't have debts anymore. There was nothing to collect. But what if this wasn't about money? I thanked Frank and drove straight to my parents' house. I told them everything, showed them the folder. Dad's face went pale. "If someone's coming here," he didn't finish the sentence. That night we stayed together in the house, doors locked, lights off, waiting for something we couldn't name. Hours passed, nothing happened. But the feeling didn't go away. And hey, if you're still here listening to this, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment the city you're watching from. I want to know how far this story is reaching. Because trust me, things are about to get worse before they get better. That night felt endless. We all sat in the living room, me, Mom, Dad, waiting for something that might not even come. Every creak of the house made us jump. Dad kept packing by the window, checking the driveway. Mom clutched her phone like she was ready to call the police any second. I sat on the couch, my heart pounding, thinking about the folder, about the names, about Carter and his shadow still hanging over us even after all these years. Nothing happened that night. No cars pulled up, no knocks on the door, no strange calls. By morning, we were exhausted but alive. Dad said maybe it was nothing, maybe Frank was just trying to scare us. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. 2 days later, that feeling proved right. I came home from work and saw it, a black car parked across the street from my parents' house. Windows tinted, engine running. A man sitting inside, sunglasses on even though it was evening. He didn't get out. He didn't knock. He just sat there, watching. I called Dad immediately. He came out on the porch, saw the car, stared at it for a long time. Then the car pulled away slowly, like it had all the time in the world. "Who was that?" I asked. Dad didn't answer. He just shook his head and went back inside. That night I called Frank, told him what happened. He went quiet for a moment, then said, "It's starting. I think someone found Carter's old list, and they're cleaning up loose ends." "Loose ends? My parents aren't." "They were part of his world once," Frank said. "Sometimes that's enough." I felt sick. Frank told me to meet him the next day. He said he had one last thing to show me, something that might explain why my parents were on that list. When I got to the cafe, he was already there, looking like he hadn't slept in days. He slid a photo across the table. It was old, edges frayed. My dad, younger, standing next to Carter, and next to them, another man I didn't recognize. "Who's that?" I asked. Frank looked around before answering. His name was Mark. He used to work with Carter. Some say he was worse than Carter ever was. When Carter died, Mark disappeared. No one knows where he went, until recently. My stomach dropped. "You think he's the one with the list?" Frank nodded. "And if he is, your parents might be in danger because of something that happened a long time ago, something they might not have even done." I left the cafe with the photo in my bag and fear crawling under my skin. That night, I showed the picture to Dad. His face went pale when he saw Mark. "He was there the night Carter was arrested," Dad said slowly. "But I thought he left town after that. Haven't heard his name in years." "Why would he come after you now?" I asked. Dad didn't answer right away. He just stared at the photo like it was a ghost. Then he said, "Because the night Carter was arrested, Mark wasn't supposed to be there. Someone tipped off the police. Someone Carter trusted. Mark always thought it was me." My blood ran cold. "Was it you?" Dad shook his head. "No, but Mark believed it." And now Mark was back, with a list, with a grudge. 3 nights later, it happened. We were sitting in the living room again when the black car pulled into the driveway. This time, it didn't stay on the street. This time, the door opened. A man got out, older now, hair gray at the edges, but his eyes sharp and cold. "Mark." Dad stood up slowly. Mom grabbed my arm. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears as Mark walked up to the porch. He didn't knock. He just opened the door like he owned the place. "Been a long time," he said, looking at Dad. Dad didn't move. "What do you want?" Mark smiled, but there was nothing friendly in it. "Closure." I stepped in front of my parents. "They don't owe you anything," I said, my voice shaking. Mark looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. "You must be the daughter," he said. "Funny, you don't even know the whole story, do you?" "Tell me then," I said. So he did. He told us about the night Carter was arrested, how the police showed up out of nowhere, how someone inside the circle had tipped them off. Carter went to prison. Mark barely got out. He lost everything, and he spent years trying to find out who betrayed them. He always thought it was my dad. "It wasn't him," I said. "He told me." "Of course he did," Mark snapped. "But I know it was someone close to him, someone who saved their own skin by selling out Carter." "Then go find that person," Dad said, "because it wasn't me." Mark stared at him for a long time. Then he said, "Maybe not, but someone has to pay, and you're the only one left." He reached into his jacket. My heart stopped. But before he could pull anything out, another voice came from the doorway. "Drop it, Mark." It was Frank. He was holding a gun. Mark froze. For a moment, no one moved. Then Mark laughed. You worked for Carter, you were nothing." "Maybe," Frank said, "but I'm not letting you hurt them." Mark looked at my dad one last time, then at me. His eyes were full of hate, but also something else, exhaustion. Like he had been carrying this grudge so long he didn't know who he was without it. Finally, he lowered his hand. "This isn't over," he said and walked out. We haven't seen him since. The police came later after Frank called them. They took the folder, the list, the photo. They said they'd try to find Mark, but people like him, they have a way of disappearing. My parents are safe, for now. Sometimes I wonder if he'll come back. But I also know something else now. My family isn't perfect. They have scars I never saw before, secrets they tried to bury. And me, I'm just trying to live with the pieces left behind.